Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Navigating the Complexities of Object Storage Compatibility, brought to you by SNIA, Cloud Storage Technology Initiative. This is Michael Hord, your host and facilitator for this webinar. I work for Intel, and I serve as chair for the SNIA Cloud Storage Technology Initiative. Today's conversation is with Gregory Turetsky, who works for Seagate and serves as co-chair for the SNIA Cloud Storage Technical Work Group. Hello, Gregory. How are you today?
Hi, Mike. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We'll have a great webinar today.
Awesome. Also joining us today is Arnold Jones, who serves as SNIA Technical Director. Hello, Arnold. How are you today?
Doing great, Michael. Looking forward to this webinar. We have a lot of great content for everybody on the phone. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Awesome. Before we get started, I want to mention that SNIA is a group of about 200 industry-leading organizations comprising of 2,500 active contributing members and 50,000 participating IT end users and storage experts worldwide. As one of the organizations within SNIA, the CSTI is dedicated to education and promotion of cloud storage technologies like AI at the edge, storage security and management, as well as driving understanding and collaboration among other industry associations. Now let's take a quick look at the SNIA legal notice. This provides SNIA's copyright notice regarding use of the material. There are no warranties expressed or implied, so if you want to reference this material, please do so at your own risk. You can download a copy of this presentation using the interface for this live webinar. The interface also allows you to submit questions during the talk and rate this presentation at the conclusion. We really appreciate your questions and feedback. For today's discussion, we will explore object storage compatibility challenges. Specifically, Gregory will share various example documented focus areas to be aware of, as well as undocumented examples that help illustrate the need for community testing. Arnold will then present an industry call for participation. SNIA will be facilitating a cloud object storage plugfest co-located at Storage Developer Conference in 2024. As a final note, please submit questions at any time during the presentation. If we're not able to cover all the questions during the session, we will answer your questions in a Q&A blog, which will be posted after the webinar. So let's get started. Gregory, please take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Let's dive in. So we'll talk about the object storage implementations landscape, and then we'll dive into some examples related to S3 as a particular implementation. So object storage became a critical capability used by many applications worldwide. There are many implementations of object storage solutions and many different protocols. By far, the most popular is what is called the Simple Storage Service, or S3, which came from Amazon. And there are a variety of implementations of the server side that is claimed to be compatible to S3 from different vendors. Some of them are open source implementations, some of them are commercial, intended for deployment on premises or provided by the managed service providers like Amazon, Oracle, and so on. One interesting example here is with Google Cloud. Google Cloud Storage came with their own interface or their own protocol for object storage access, but lately they added support for S3 compatible API for accessing Google Cloud Storage. So in addition to S3 compatible implementations, there are some specific different protocols for object storage, specifically Google Cloud Storage, Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, OpenStack Swift interface, and last but not least, the CDMI standard driven by SNIA that has also several documented implementations, both with open source and commercial. So large variety of server-side implementations. If we look on the client side, this list is can go on and on and on. The slide shows only a small subset of S3 or object storage client implementations. First of all, there are SDKs available, and specifically the most popular ones are from Amazon for S3 client implementation for a variety of languages, and also a set of SDKs from Min.io that are used by many application developers to implement S3 compatible API. And then there are many companies that actually implement their own implementation and may or may not use those SDKs. So some of the examples can be seen on the slide, but again, there are many, many more implementations. Before we go further into the discussion about the incompatibilities, we would like to understand more the audience here. We'll do have several questions here for the audience. So let's start with the first poll question. What is your company's role in the object space? Are you a customer of an object storage? Are you a developer? Are you a service provider that provides managed service, or maybe doing some research, or maybe some other way of interacting with object storage?
Yeah, this is great to get this input, and we really appreciate folks' feedback as well as your questions. So this will be awesome to get some insight.
Yeah, so for each one of those polls, in general, the platform that we're using today is given for about 60 seconds. So take your time, but it would be great to see this. So what I can see right now is that we have about 60% of developers. This is great. We have some CSPs, we have some customers. I think it's a great mix of customers, and we're glad to see everyone here attending. Yeah, we have somebody from the research as well. Great. Okay. I think the poll, this first question poll is over. So let me move to the second question. Assuming you are a customer of an object storage solution, what is your primary production implementation? And the answers here are, one option would be an open source implementation, whether you run it on-prem or in the cloud, namely things like Ceph or Min.io. Option B would be a commercial on-premises solution, so things like maybe Dell ECS or IBM or Cloudian, Scality, HP, well, Scality, Hitachi, and so on. Option C would be a managed cloud service offering, so things like Amazon S3, Azure, Seagate, Live Cloud, Wasabi, Backblaze, and so on. Or maybe option D would be something else, or option E if you're not using any object storage solution. Okay, so and looking on the answers, we have about 50% using on-prem commercial solutions. We have 10% open source, 20% cloud. Interesting. I actually see 5% answering other. Would be interesting to see. Maybe if you can put it in the question interface, if you answered other here, what are those other options that you're using? Okay, and the third question here, and then we'll move on with the content, is assuming you are a customer of an object storage solution, what is the total object storage capacity that is used by your business across all locations and implementations? And the options here are it's below 1 terabyte. Second option is between 1 terabyte and 1 petabyte. Then up to 10 petabyte or over 10 petabyte of object storage capacity. Okay.
Wow.
Starting to see some answers here.
Yeah, we're seeing kind of a poll on one side and another very large and kind of more modest.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thanks. That helps us to understand better the audience. Okay, thanks for answers. So let's move on. Let's talk about incompatibilities, and we'll see some real-world examples because the by far probably the most popular implementation today are following the S3. We'll focus specifically on the S3 compatibility for the sake of this presentation. So let's talk about Amazon S3. This is probably the largest storage deployment today. It was launched in 2006. So today they're over 17 years old. And the recent reinvent, the Amazon team was talking about over 350 trillion objects in Amazon S3, serving over 100 million requests per second, and dealing with exabytes of capacity. So it's really sizable deployment. The S3 API is documented on the Amazon website, and it includes over 90 what they call the actions directly in S3 API that include a variety of features. Some of them are related to the data handling, some of them are related to management aspects. In addition to those S3 actions, they also have additional 60 plus what they call Amazon S3 control actions. And moreover, they also have some relevant things related to data access, things like access controls, user management, and so on within the IEM and the STS functionality. So all in all, a very feature-rich and complex API. And when we are talking about S3 compatible implementations, it's important to understand to what extent this compatibility is implemented. Different vendors and different projects are providing subsets of this functionality directly. Pretty much all the vendors that are implementing S3 compatible API, they have some documented incompatibilities. You can search for the examples, and I put here some of the examples from some of the vendors on like IBM, Scalability, Min.io, and Dell. Here, talking about a subsets of S3 APIs that they may not support in their S3 compatible object storage solution. Some of them may go in the other direction and implement things that may not be available from the Amazon S3 API, like this extension that was done by Dell with the search queries for the metadata. But those are documented incompatibilities. So every vendor that decides whatever product direction they're taking decides which subset of an S3 API they implement, and it's documented, so it's relatively easy to identify. What we wanted to talk about more is how to ensure for things that the vendor decides to implement, how to ensure compatibility, because again of this complexity of the APIs. So first thing that the developers usually looking for is compliance tools, how to validate the protocol compliance. And today there is no tool provided, for example, by Amazon or by anybody else that can be used as the kind of golden standard for compatibility. I talked to the various implementers. Pretty much everybody has their own homegrown solutions for compliance testing. There are some open source solutions coming from the Ceph team, with the S3 tests and few variations of those S3 tests from Splunk and OpenIO. There is another S3 compatibility test coming from Min.io, but they are typically focused on a particular object storage implementation like Ceph or Min.io. So here is an example. If I proceed, running Mint, which is an Min.io specific test case, against different backends with Min.io, Backblaze B2, Google S3, and Amazon S3. This test finds no errors on Min.io, but it does find errors on other implementations, including Amazon S3. So each one of those test suites is kind of biased towards a particular implementation and may or may not be used as a reference for others. It is typically used, but with a grain of salt.
Hey, Gregory, we have a question from the audience, and let's see. The question is on the previous poll, why did we only go to 10 petabyte? And so this person is using multiple petabytes, like up to 100 petabytes. And he's asking whether object storage is suitable for that level, or was there any thoughts around that? Go ahead.
So yeah, absolutely. So we see customers using tens of petabytes or hundreds of petabytes of object storage. I think there are some customers that Amazon was talking about using over exabyte of object storage for a single customer. So architecturally, it is definitely scalable. There are different implementations that some of them may or may not scale to these levels. But from our experience, yes, there are particular customers who go to this kind of 100 plus petabytes or exabyte scale. The majority, and also that what we see in the poll results, there are still many people who have much smaller deployments.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so let's look into some examples of compatibility that may or may not be known. So let's take one example. When we store data in S3 compatible object storage or in S3, the object key, which is basically a path to the object, has to be up to 1024 bytes long, and any of those objects can coexist in the same bucket, right? So you have several slashes, you may have dots, you may have double slashes, and so on. Those options won't work with Amazon S3. There are particular implementations, though, that are offering S3 compatible solutions that may or may not follow this compatibility, this specification. So there are at least a couple of solutions that we looked into that do support, for example, the object name up to 1024 bytes long, but they provide they use a file system as the underlying storage for the objects, and they interpret slash as a directory. So in this case, the directory segments between the slashes are limited to 255 bytes, and that means that if the object name does not include any slash, it cannot go beyond 255 bytes. There are other limitations with those implementations, for example, that may not allow particular combinations of characters like double slash or dot or dot dot, because in the underlying file system, it translates to file system specific constructs. So the reason we are aware of this situation is because we are aware of cases when the customers were moving, for example, from Amazon S3 to another S3 compatible implementation, and experienced these limitations, could not migrate the workload easily because of these limits. And this is an example of, right, if I'm running a request and to put object to one of those implementations into a bucket and use the name with the double slash inside, I may get the error saying that this object name contains some character. The same request working against the Amazon S3 endpoint will work successfully. Other examples that would be interesting to look into. One of the requests that S3 supports is called complete multi-part upload. In particular, when customers are dealing with the large objects and uploaded this large object, the S3 breaks this object into multiple parts, upload them, and then at the end, this upload must be closed with a complete multi-part upload request. If we look on the Amazon documentation, complete multi-part upload is an idempotent operation, which means you may run this request several times within a short period of time. And assuming the first one was successful, the subsequent ones should also be successful. The reason it's implemented this way is because object storage assumes that there might be timeouts, there might be unreliable networks between the client and the server. So if the client didn't get a response acknowledged from the server on the first complete multi-part upload request, they may resubmit it again and expect the same response. So if I'm running this complete multi-part upload request, here's an example with the Amazon S3, and I specify an upload ID, I get response of 200. if I resubmit the same command for the same upload ID, immediately after that, I get 200 again. And some other implementations do not follow this. So, for example, one of the implementations that we've seen, and again, that was identified by a customer who complained about an error. You run the complete multi-part upload. The first one is successfully finished. And at that point in time, it validates the upload ID. So if the application runs the complete multi-part upload for the same upload ID, again, it fails with the 404 not found. And so we had cases when users complained about the issues related to this. Another example that we've heard about complete multi-part upload is an undocumented implementation. This is related more to the client side. So if you look on the Amazon S3 API documentation, it says that complete multi-part upload should include a particular request body that in JSON format that should have a complete multi-part upload statement here. And what happened with the particular client implementation with the SDK for JavaScript prior to a certain version, it was, instead of saying complete multi-part upload, it was saying completed multi-part upload. Apparently, Amazon supported both options, but other implementations that follow the spec did not. And so there are cases when customers who used a S3 client implementation using the SDK for JavaScript from Amazon, the application may work with Amazon, but may fail with other implementations. This was reported. Amazon fixed the SDK in a particular version, but that's another example of something that may work with one S3 compatible implementation, or in particular Amazon, but may not work with some others. Yet another example of an issue. Another S3 API action called get object attributes can be used to query for particular attributes of an object. This is the response that I'm getting if querying this, if running this request against the Amazon S3. Shows me last modified, version ID, e-tag, and some other some of the important attributes about an object. But some other implementations that we've seen are not returning the attributes. Instead, for some reason, they return the actual object. So again, something that may result in failures of particular applications that may work with Amazon, but may not work with the others. This is yet another example. I'll probably skip it, but the point here is that in general, if we talk about the API implementation for an object storage, or in particular S3 protocol implementation, it is a very complex set of actions and set of APIs, and every action has a variety of options that can be used. There are many nuances in the way it's implemented, and without proper set of tests and tools that can be used by the developers to validate compatibility, there will always be incompatibilities that can impact the customers. This is something that is important. And again, it's absolutely fine if a development team, if a product team defines that some subset of APIs or some features of the API are not required for the particular implementation, as long as they are aware of this. There are many cases when things are incompatible and the developers may not even know about that because they don't have comprehensive test suite that can be used to test compatibility. If a development team works on the implementation of this of an API, obviously the deep understanding of the API is needed. It's always important to test and do functional verification against some baseline. Testing is required, and what we see is that really the more compatible you are to the standard solution, or the closer you implement the standard, the easier it is for the customers' adoption, and the easier it is to go into the market. So I think that's completes my part on the compatibilities.
Oh, go ahead with the poll because go ahead.
Yeah.
Then we'll get to some questions. Go ahead though.
Sure. So we wanted just to understand if you've experienced this kind of issues on your own. Those things that I've mentioned, maybe some other things, transitioning from one S3 compatible implementation or from one object storage implementation to another object storage implementation. If you haven't experienced any kind of issues with of this kind. Yeah, looks like, at least for now, like everybody who responded.
Wow. Holy cow. Yeah, that may indicate our need to have a second or third view on this series. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, at least there are like 30% who are lucky and did not experience it so far. Or maybe didn't switch over from one implementation to another.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it clearly confirms this the problem that we see with our customers. Okay, you mentioned there are some questions.
Oh, did you cover the last poll question too, or?
That's the poll. Yeah, we'll have another one at the end.
But, at the end. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, we did have some questions. So I wanted to just mention that the purpose of presenting these examples was just to indicate the need for more community dialogue and more community testing. And Gregory, I wanted, I'm not going to read the question, but if you could take a look at the top question. It's on any thoughts on keeping pace with AWS as they evolve the API. And that's also, we're not just looking at AWS, it's really object storage overall. But any thoughts on that first question at the top of the?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I understand where it's coming from with the new directory bucket announcement. So yeah, and we are talking to Amazon as well. So Arnold will talk about the plans for the plugfest and the compatibility tests. We definitely want to see Amazon participating in that. Hopefully they will join, and it will help us to really understand what is coming, what changes are happening. But I think this new flavor of S3 compatible API, this time coming from Amazon, with multiple differences from the standard from the original implementation, just indicates this importance of compatibility testing. So everybody understands, even if we are not fully compatible for a reason, we at least understand where these incompatibilities are.
Right. And then, Gregory, if you want to look at the second and third question, those are probably fairly quick questions, but if you could take a look at those too. Go ahead.
Sure. So the another question is, do you see the need for the fast object storage for AI kind of workloads? Yes, it is happening. So when object storage started, I think it was more considered as kind of a slow and kind of second or third tier for a backup and archive. And over time, it is definitely moving into more primary storage layer with the people placing data lakes. There are many features added to object storage, like S3 Select API, for example, that become more interesting for data analytics and queries. And I think this fact that Amazon just launched this directory buckets, the S3 Express tier, with which is far more expensive than their standard one, but is much faster, kind of justifies this need, right? So they definitely see this need, and we see other implementers of object storage solution going into the fast object storage as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's one question. We're getting more questions, but if we could do the what are the best ways to see a unified view of different types of storage? If you had, and it's kind of a broad view of objects, file, and blocks. Go ahead.
So there are solutions that are available on the market from different vendors that are trying to provide some visibility into storage across different types of storage. I don't think it's a topic for this conversation, but I'm sure Sneha may come with the talk on that.
Yeah, we definitely
subject, yeah.
do. That is correct. And then one last one, we just got at the top of the list. With the introduction of directory buckets, do we anticipate vendors picking up compatibility there as well?
That's a good question. I think that's something that would be interesting to discuss. And by the way, so this forum that we are trying to build for the object storage, and again, we'll talk more about this later in this webinar. It's intended for compatibility, but I think we should use it also for the interaction and kind of discussion of what makes sense to do, right? Does it make sense to go do the directory buckets? Does it make sense to propose some other changes for the object storage APIs from the performance point of view and so on? So there are all kinds of interesting ideas with maybe using a different transport layer for this and so on. So I think if we can build this a discussion platform for object storage developers, that may lead to some very interesting discussions and better customer experience eventually.
Okay. Well, we're so thankful we get more questions, and I do think we do have the time. So let's really make sure we answer these. But this is very good discussion here. So there's a question on, have customers experienced incompatibilities around different SDKs and different HA behaviors for load balancers, round robin, and other techniques?
Yeah, so in general, HA and the SDK, it's an interesting point. So there is a longer version of this talk that I was given at the Storage Developers Conference last year. And I was talking also about some other types of incompatibilities, including things like consistency models between different implementations and so on. It's not strictly the API. I think this question is more related to how the object storage is implemented and what is going on with the load balancers and so on. Absolutely, yes. We see these examples as well, especially when people are deploying object storage from a vendor within their data center, and it needs to get into the existing networking infrastructure. It certainly can lead to unexpected results because of different aspects of networking infrastructure and so on. Yeah.
Awesome. And then when it comes to object store data protection with backup software, do we ever see some incompatibilities with recovered data?
Usually when you store it, when the backup software or any software stores data into an object storage, if you read the data, right, the assumption is that you read the same data that you stored. Otherwise, the storage has some major issues. You should always be able to read what you stored there. I think the problem might be if you stored your data in one implementation and then you had to migrate your data to some other implementation and read it. If it's not planned and if there is no right solution for the data migration, it may lead to these incompatibilities, but I think that that's something that needs to be addressed as part of the migration from one solution to another.
Yeah, I think you pointed out earlier that some of the intent was like multi-cloud with migrating from one platform to the other, and just being aware of incompatibilities as far as the different support, what's supported on each of those respective areas. But in this case, it could be an enterprise that made a fairly significant change in their framework. But then they're trying to recover data that was before the change. And so it may have been 8 years ago that data is needed now for some reason. And so that it's not necessarily a migration as much of a life cycle. And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's in general, it's important to plan well the migrations, and I think there are subtle differences between different solutions. So you can't give a generic recipe for migration. Every case will be different.
Okay. Okay, and we have one. Let's have one more question, then we'll move to Arnold's presentation. As object storage becomes more prevalent in primary storage space, could you talk about data protection, especially functionalities like synchronous replication, multi-site deployments, or your view, or whether your view is if that's not needed for object storage?
It is absolutely needed. And there are implementations, right? So S3 in general has replication features, maybe not synchronous replication. Well, there are replication features and different implementations of different ways to address those. I think there should always be an option for any vendor to provide some added value, right? So yes, we are trying to get and provide a compatible API that can be used by the customers, but there is also always should be a place to provide some added value that will support the competition between the offerings. And the data protection is definitely one of those options. So there are different implementations. Some do erasure recording, some do replication, some do geo-transparent replication between different regions, or maybe between different availability zones. These aspects are also different between cloud-based solutions and on-premises solutions. If somebody deploys an on-prem object storage solution, they may or may not have an option to go for multi-site deployment, right, based on whatever data center layout they have. But absolutely, it depends on the use case. Based on your use case, you should define what the requirements are for data durability, data availability, and then it may lead into specific requirements for the implementation. If you need replication, if you need other ways of data protection, multi-site, and so on.
Great. Awesome. Gregory, do you want to transition for the next part? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So I think that's my part. Arnold, please take it away with the plugfest talk.
Thanks there, Gregory. Before I dive into the plugfest, I want to tell you a little bit about the Storage Developer Conference. This is a conference that we put on every year. We've been putting on it for over 10 years. It's located takes place in September in Silicon Valley. The 2024 Storage Developer Conference will be in Santa Clara, California, the week of September 16th. And what the conference is, it's a educational conference for storage developers. It's an engineering conference, and we always have a lot of good presentations and stuff. And one of the things we've done at this conference for quite a while now is hold a plugfest, but a SMB3 plugfest. It's a plugfest that's focused on interoperability of SMB3 implementations. And this year, we would like to expand and also set up and offer a cloud object storage plugfest. And this will allow us to do interoperability testing among different vendor implementations. The SNIA Cloud Object Storage Plugfest, the purpose of it will be for vendors to bring their object storage implementations to test, identify, and fix bugs in a collaborative setting with the goal of providing a forum in which companies can develop interoperable products. And this is a picture from one of our SMB3 Plugfest, and we get a lot of good participation, a lot of good work takes place, a lot of conversations take place, a lot of learning takes place from other developers that can even help you with your own implementation. So with this, the operational overview of the Plugfest is it's going to be in similar format to the SMB3 Interoperability Lab. We used to call it the SMB3 Plugfest, and a couple of years ago they changed the name to Interoperability Lab, but it's still the basic thing of a Plugfest. It's going to be held in SDC this year in Santa Clara. And if you want to understand about what takes place at a Plugfest, check out this link here. It talks a little bit about what we do at the SMB3 IO Lab. But we plan to do something similar to for the Cloud Object Storage Plugfest. We actually, SNIA, provide and support the network infrastructure for the Plugfest. So there's a framework for testing. It's a 1 gigabit Ethernet network. We provide meals, everything like this during the event. The Plugfest is actually a multi-day event, so there's a lot of testing that can take place, and also at the same time, the Plugfest participants can attend the Storage Developer Conference itself. The participants of the plugfest actually define how the testing takes place. SNEA, we do not actually define what tests to be run or anything like that. The plugfest participants among themselves will do that. And we will actually hold several planning calls prior to the event to work out the details. There is a fee to participate, which includes a full STC conference pass for each participating engineer. So the engineers that are participating in the plugfest are required to have an STC conference pass, which we offer a discounted price for that. And you get a lot of good content out of besides the plugfest, you also get a lot of good content out of the STC conference itself. And do go check out storagedeveloper.org and take a look at some of the past presentations from this conference and kind of give you an idea of what we do there. And this is a very important point here. All plugfest participants are under an NDA to protect disclosure of issues found. So if vendor A finds a bug in vendor B's product, they cannot go out and shout it to the world. The other thing the NDA allows you to do, if you have a product that hasn't been publicly announced yet and you want to bring it there to do testing, you can, because everybody's still under NDA. So besides protecting the disclosure of bugs, it also protects the disclosure of unannounced products. So for this year, for the object storage protocol plugfest, one of the things we want to try to do, and we're planning on doing, is trying to actually get experts from Amazon, Google, and Microsoft from their protocol support teams to actually participate in the plugfest, to have at least one person on site from each of those companies to help answer questions about the protocol and help address any issues we may happen to find. Also, we're encouraging companies that are going to be participating to bring any protocol test suites they'd like to share with other participants. And we're also trying to find companies that actually have protocol test suites to bring them and get them involved in the plugfest. So if we can accomplish all this, it'll be a great plugfest with a lot of tools and resources available for testing. And Gregory, I'll turn this over to you for your poll question.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Arnold. Yeah, so one other thing that it was coming, and yeah, please answer this question as well. It would be interesting for us to understand if after this announcement, you would be interested to participate, or at least to learn more about the plugfest. While the poll is going on, one question that I was asked a couple of times when I was talking about this idea, especially in the object storage, or we call it cloud object storage, right? When we're talking about testing against the cloud, do we really need to get into the same room? Can we test cloud from wherever we are? And I think there is always a value in kind of dedicated work when developers get together and spend time together and run tests in the same room. But it might be part of the conversation that we plan to have for those who are interested in the plugfest and decide whether it is an absolutely required for everybody to be in the same room, or some people may participate remotely. But I think for now, the goal is to bring everybody to the same room during the plugfest.
Yeah, because without being in the same room, you miss what we call the networking track. That's the communication amongst all the participants on different things. And you learn a lot from, quote, the networking or hallway track, some people call it. And also, we have a lot of good presentations at SDC that will be on probably this topic. So you'll miss actually hearing those live and be able to ask questions of the speakers.
Yeah. In addition, there's a question that's in the queue right now. It's on more of the future and kind of how there may be some degree of standardization, but what the face-to-face enables is that we will not just have presentations on a topic, but we'll also have things like a BOF, a birds of a feather. So it'll be an open discussion. And that's really where we as a community can have the dialogue as far as what's working, where do we want to go as a community. And that would include, beyond just testing what's existent now, but really where should the industry go and what it might look like to have a degree of standardization. And So I think the value of the SDC and just being part of that dialogue is going to be immensely important.
Yeah. Okay. So I think for the next steps, if you are interested, and thanks for, I think we have over 70% of people who are interested at least to learn more about this plugfest idea. Please contact us, and if you did not haven't done this before, please register. Either send an email to cloudtwg@snea.org, or fill out the plugfest survey at the SurveyMonkey. There is also a QR code that leads you to the same URL. And everybody who has registered, we are going to schedule a follow-up call with people who are interested in participation, and we'll talk more about what exactly is going to be, how this plugfest is going to look like, and what we should do there.
Excellent. And so really the participation early on is joining the technical working group that Gregory is a co-chair, and but just getting the collection of who's interested, and then we will be following up with some scheduled calls, and that will be more of just leading up to the plugfest. But there is the technical working group, which is working on a variety of work items that are just foundational for what SNEA is doing in cloud storage. Gregory, do you want to say a few words as far as the work group?
Yeah, so in general, SNEA is running several technical working groups, and cloud storage is one of them. We are working on object storage or cloud storage standardization with CDMI, and this new effort that we are launching now to support a variety of implementations that are out there, just making sure that people can communicate and can ensure compatibility. I think the plugfest and the surrounding ecosystem that we are planning to promote and build will help tremendously all people who are dealing with the development and the object storage.
Great. So I see we've got 2 additional questions. So the first one is there a standard object storage implementation against which the S3 compatibility would be defined? So that's kind of the notion of a gold standard. Any thoughts on
that? I think when we, so there is an S3, right, coming from Amazon. I don't know if we call it a gold standard, but this is the S3. Obviously, Amazon will drive the roadmap and decide how to modify the S3 based on their needs. But I think this is the baseline. If we claim S3 compatibility, then this is what we're comparing to. Again, every vendor decides what subset of the S3 they want to support and to what extent they want to keep compatibility. I think the goal for the plugfest is just to make sure that if you are not compatible, you're at least aware where those incompatibilities are. Then you decide what to do with that. It's okay to be incompatible as long as you know where those differences are.
Okay, great. And then the last question we have right now is, let's see, Gregory, you could take a look at the top of the question stack, but it's how would incompatibility be categorized as something that is important for clients as compared to meeting the AWS spec or behavior?
I think, again, we do not set any goals or requirements, right? It's every implementer's decision what to do. As long as, for example, a particular solution, they find out that a particular API is not behaving with their implementation comparing to, let's say, Amazon or Min.io or whatever. And then they'll decide what to do. If this is important for their customers, they'll fix it. If it's not important, they'll leave it this way. But we do not set a goal for everybody to be compliant, right? It's everyone's decision how to handle it. As long as you are the implementer, you know what differences are there in your implementation, you decide how to handle them.
Great. Yeah, and it's kind of there has been a set of tribal knowledge in the past, which I think everybody has their own version. But I think this notion of a community dialogue, the birds of a feather, the plugfest, and just a chance to gather together, that some of that tribal knowledge, we can really leverage our expertise, as a community working together. So any last thoughts there, Gregory? Or
No, I think that's great to see all this participation, all the feedback, and all questions. And hopefully we'll see more people register for the plugfest, and see you everybody at the plugfest.
Awesome. And also folks to join the technical working group. And then, by the way, CSTI is an initiative. So we do education webinars, but we also are working with other industry organizations like the SOTA Foundation. They're part of the Linux Foundation. So we're looking at, working to collaborate at an industry association level and stimulate the dialogue for improvements that will be going on in the future. So I think that's I'm having a software update. I better not click anything right now, go very quickly. But I think that's the conclusion of our webinar. I just want to thank Gregory and Arnold for your expertise and thoughts. This has been a fantastic discussion and just great feedback from the audience. And I really appreciate all your time and effort. And thank you to our audience. Thanks for joining us. Please remember to rate this webinar, as it's very important to get your feedback. And this helps us create better educational material. Also, please remember you can always download this presentation and many other items at our educational library, as well as follow us on social media. Thanks again to everyone, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.